All right, two more episodes for the week, and I am not sure how this one's going to go, but I'm going to give it a shot. Right now, I have this camera rolling, which is going to serve for my on camera stuff and VO, and I have two Fujifilm X-H2S's that are running over there. Okay, so what I want to do is just talk a little bit about keying from behind your subject matter. Some people call it a back key. Some people might call it a reverse key. But there's a lot of terminology that has to do with lighting and whether you're shooting into the short or the long side and all kinds of stuff. But that's not what this video is about. We're going to take a look at one particular setup and maybe a couple of different variations of that. Some things you should consider if your main strongest light is coming from behind your subject matter. In this case, it's not. I am shooting into, we'll call it the shadow side, and I'm bouncing light over there. So, this is pretty typical, but my light source is really coming from camera side. And then I might split key where it's coming from the side, but we're really talking about that main source, whether it's a street lamp, an instrument that you set, the sun that may be low in the sky, coming from behind your subject matter, which is beautiful and creates separation and also lets you play with hard and soft light together. So I'm going to have to drop this key light here down considerably once I start doing it. But what I want you to first look at is the wide shot of the setup. We've got Bruce. He's our protagonist, we'll say. We have a little light that is up on a little stand, which is one of these little bicolor Ulanzi lights that I use sometimes for lighting setups. They're chip on board. This one's running at 4%. We'll talk about using this one later on just a clamp. And then you'll see to camera left side to Bruce's right, there's another stand with what could play as maybe a 6x6 bounce for fill. So we're going to play around with that a little bit. But the first thing that I have to do is I have to go and set up things correctly. I'm going to drop the key light here to about 8%. It's 100 right now. And it's just going to create a little bit of ambience. So let's take a look at that first, because we can cut to the camera that's our wide. And I'm just looking at our levels. So that's at about 8% right now. And looking at it about 8%, we can see that we've got a little bit of something happening behind Bruce, which is creating a little bit of separation in the space. I also have the MT Pro, which is just over his right shoulder, so left side of frame. We're seeing kind of a background, but it's out of focus. And there's the MT Pro, and that's dialed down. And we're really playing in that warm light realm right now. So this is obviously a nighttime scene, maybe an exterior. So you can see here when I'm panning a camera that we can see that main source, that key light for the scene. And we're getting that edge on Bruce. It's pretty defined. It's a hard light source. As I'm panning back to the left, we're obviously seeing some flares. We can get rid of those flares or come back to them and just sort of let that live there. Obviously, things we can handle with matte boxes or flagging, or we can embrace them. So that's all that's going on right now. And to me, it's working overall. The main little Ulanzi light is at about 8%. It doesn't really matter, but I'm just kind of giving you a sense. And we're shooting at 1600 ISO. And we are wide open on this 90mm lens, which is, I think, at an f2. And so, it's pretty shallow in terms of look and feel. But now what I want to do is play a little bit with a modifier. So again, I'm going to drop this key light here. So what I want to do now is I want to mess with the modifier. And I'm going to bring that in right now. And we're going to take a look at it and essentially grab some of that light that harder light that's coming in camera right, and we're gonna bounce some of that back as a fill from the other side. So you're gonna see what's happening, and that source could be coming from somewhere else in the frame. It could be possibly light coming from a shop window or another street lamp, but it's definitely softer. And now we're going to do something a little bit more drastic, which is we're going to bring that fill over to the same side that that back key is coming from. And so when I'm doing that, you can see that it's definitely a lot different than bringing that fill in from the camera left side. Bringing in from the camera right side is now taking that harder light, grabbing it, and then wrapping it around Talon's face. So you have to play around with this stuff and see what kinds of results you're going to get. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take Bruce and I'm going to turn him a little bit more towards camera. And we're going to talk about one other little issue that you can run into. I'm also going to move the modifier back to the original position I had it in. And we're going to take a look at his eyes. And one of the big problems that we can have is that you don't have a catch light. And sometimes that's fine. Depending on the character and what you're doing, it could be completely acceptable. But let's go ahead and solve that problem. All right, so now that I've repositioned Bruce and we've kind of lost that catch light in his eye, we're going to just use a little bit of a trick there. And that's where the second light comes in. I've got it at very low output now, about 4%. I'm going to soften it a little bit with this little modifier so that it's, just really mellow. And it may sit right below or above the camera lens. I'm going to try that first. If not, and I'm not getting what I want with the catch, what's nice about this is I can essentially rest it on the table and I can move it around and find a position where I'm getting a little bit of that glint, that little life light in his eye. So I put it on the table, moved it over there, camera left, and just found that place where in his right eye there was a little bit of a glint that you can see right here. And that's the trick there, is that if you're going to do this, sometimes what you have to do is when you're creating that soft fill, you still want a little bit of that life light in the person's eyes, and that needs to be a part of the equation. Your choice how you do it. That's the beauty of lighting. It's about a relationship between you, the director of photography, and the director. And the director takes, as my friend has said in the past, Skip Suddath, an actor and director, the director dreams the script and then surrounds themselves with people that are going to help realize that vision that he or she has. And that's what a director does. So it starts with a director of photography or cinematographer, and then the other department headed up by a production designer. And that triangle is what creates what it is that winds up on screen. The trick is to do it in a consistent way throughout a story that you're telling. So there's continuity in terms of look, feel, etc., and generally lighting style. So start having to play with stuff. I'm not recommending that you go out and buy the Ulanzi lights and stuff. I'll link to them and little pieces of, canvas board that you can use as bounce. But it can be a pretty cool way to try these setups in a more practical sense. You could also check out Set a Light, which is an app that I love to use, and I'm sure it will incorporate itself into more episodes of the Daily Drop. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful. I'll see if it cuts together pretty well. It's going out no matter what. Don't forget to, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Daily Drop.